In-depth analysis on national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth
Mics are up.
98.1.
Studio is live. A very good morning to you, Lagos, and thank you very much for joining us and staying with us here on Smooth 98.1. Today, Tuesday, 25th June 2019, it is time for Freshly Pressed 981. And joining us this cold morning to go through the stories, we have Justin Ijeh at Justin Ijeh on Twitter. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you for coming in. And of course, Devoe Okorie. Good morning, Devoe.
Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning,
Cool.
Devoe.
We got the ministerial cabinet tag team.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Just into the stories now. We have 8 stories to go through in the next 30 minutes. Join the conversation by sending us messages through WhatsApp to 0809 444 We're also on Twitter.
On Twitter at Smooth91FM. Hashtag is freshly pressed 91.
All right. You take us through the first set of
All
stories.
right. First set of stories. I'll start with Devoe on this one. I'm still a judge, Ofili-Ajumogobia tells the court.
Yes, that is the cry of one of the federal high court judges who had been charged on a 30 count charge historically, which was slashed down to 18. Now, she was saying this upon the current hearing of to the jurisdiction of the court to hear her case, given the fact that the federal government had not gazetted her dismissal. Now, just a little history on this. Justice Rita Ofili-Ajumogobia was charged in 2016 with about 30 counts, bordering on offenses filed by the EFCC. Now, at that point, it was struck out in courts. That was when the council mentioned the issue of technicality, that they could not look into the case given the fact that it had not gone through due process. And remember the due process of charging judicial officers, whereby they have to be investigated by the NJC, and the NJC has to recommend either they stay or they get dismissed to the federal government. Now, this was done eventually after, and the NJC found her wanting and recommended her dismissal, of which the federal government is yet to gazette, which is the point the chief counsel is pushing. However, the federal government, having heard this case, is looking at it, which is why the AFCC has pounced on the matter again and has brought it back up before Justice Oshodi. Now, Justice Oshodi is now looking at it on an 18-count charge. It wasn't just her alone; it was including her and one Oba, Godwin Oba, on 18 counts. Now, the issue here is simple. How far can they go? I think the council's position is to buy her some time because already the NJC's position has been made known already. Will their objection be enough to delay the case? And secondly, you know the optics of this. If your colleagues have found you guilty, there really isn't much left. But the law is the law. It takes no regard for feelings or sentiments. Let's see how far the judicial reform goes. And the truth is, her case is just one out of many. What we've seen across time is the cherry picking of different judicial cases. We have a barrage of cases piled up that have not been attended to. We need to see acceleration amongst the judicial issues. Yes, in recent history we had the Onoge Gate. In more recent history we had the Salami Gate and the DSS Judge Gate. We're even beyond the judicial officers. There are a whole barrage of legal reforms that are awaiting some form of conclusion. And we hope the presidency will take that as a key point of his early mandate.
But before the presidency gets into the fray, do you think the NJC, do you think they're playing a great? Well, I wouldn't say if they're playing a great role, but how far do you think their role covers the supervision of the activities of the judiciary
You know, guys,
as gatekeepers?
I
Shouldn't
think
they weigh into fast track cases?
I mean, we can buck pass between the president and the NJC and all of that,
Mm.
but we're talking about the legal profession here, and I think it's one of those places where people are held to a rather high moral standard, moral ethical standard.
Ideally.
Ideally, yes, and that ideal really shouldn't be too far from reality in this particular context. I begin to wonder when I read things like this: where is the shame, right? Where is the individual sense of contrition? Um, she's been accused of a litany of offenses, right? I don't care who else has done what. This is your case we're talking about. What happened to just taking the L and just going away,
Yes.
right? Why are you fighting? Why are you saying I'm still a judge?
I mean, normally in the eyes of the law, you're not guilty until the court says so. You're innocent until proven guilty. So it's probably the stance that you take normally
could
if you were
just-
standing
Devoe did
trial.
say something about optics, and I think that optics are very, very important. You know, even though you're not guilty until you have been proven guilty or convicted, for that kind of position, there's some kind of expectation. There are some things that should not touch you. There's some things that your name should not be.
The appearance of it.
Yes. Fleeing
Well,
from the
unfortunately, in
appearance.
the eye of in the field of the blind, the one-eyed man is a champion.
All right. Moving on to Daily Times this morning. The Presidential Elections Petition Tribunal sitting in Abuja yesterday declined to grant Atiku Abubakar and the PDP access to inspect the server and data of smart card readers of the petitioners claimed were used in the collation of election results during the February 23rd presidential election by INEC. This matter has been on for some time, and well, we've gotten to this point. What do you think?
I mean, what's interesting is the reason why the tribunal gave for refusing the petitioner's request. Like you said, petitioners asked specifically for access to inspect INEC's central server and smart card readers, allegedly used in the conduct of the February 23rd presidential election. But the Justice Garba-led tribunal 5-man committee says, no, we're not going to grant that petition because you and the respondents have joined issues on the existence or non-existence of said server. So if we grant this request, it makes us at the tribunal look like we've taken sides on that particular issue. And Chief Chris Uche SAN, who argued the petition for the Atiku camp, told journalists that, look, that decision will not stand. They would appeal it because the law actually allows them to, that they haven't listed specific any device or equipment which may be in contention. What they have said in accordance with the law is we want access to all the materials that were used to conduct the election, of which a server is one. So whether we're having an argument about the existence of server or not doesn't stop you from granting us the petition of access to the server. So you're basically denying us of a fundamental right because this is public information.
But isn't the stance, liking to accepting or saying that, if you accept the reality of one, it means a general acceptance of the other?
Yeah, but should
could
that concern the tribunal? that's the argument the tribunal is making.
Yes.
And the counter from Krisuche SAN is that's none of your business, right? The law allows us to have access to this information. Forget about whether we and
whether we believe the information exists
or not. Exactly.
Now that we have access, we should have access.
So one of those cases where technicalities,
it's a technical
quote
case.
unquote,
Interesting.
But they've said that they're going to appeal. Chief Michael Zekome SAN, who is also on the petitioning side, has also rated that they will appeal.
I guess we wait until that appeal happens. Let's move on to this day, and this is on the alleged certificate fraud. The Abuja division of the Court of Appeal yesterday ordered President Buhari to respond within 5 days to the appeal filed against his qualification for the 2019 presidential election. Also to respond within same 5 days, the APC, which nominated Buhari for the presidential poll, and the INEC, which accepted Buhari's nomination as candidate of the APC in the 2019 presidential election, all to respond within 5 days on the alleged certificate fraud.
I don't know how to title this. It's a lot of how do I say it? jumping jack flash. That's you have rabbits jumping all over.
Oh dear.
The news is full of hubris, a bunch of things that do not affect the common man. And why do I say this? We're back again on the issue of the academic qualification of the presidency. And currently it's at the appeal court stage, having gone through back and forth between the high courts, where it was nullified in different courts. In a case whereby three appellants, that's Agu Kalu, Labran Ismail, Hasse El Kuris, are suing the APC for taking in the nomination of the presidency, suing the president in terms of him not being eligible for qualification for running for president in the 2019 election. Now, what they're disputing is the educational qualification. Obviously, remember, I think the qualification had to do with his WAEC certificate, and which was disputed for a long time, of which eventually WAEC came out to give some form of attestation. So they are still pushing on technical grounds that the courts at the time that they did dismiss their claim didn't have that jurisdiction, and they erred in law. And as of the time, even when INEC collected it, nothing had been shown to that point. So we still wait to see the technicalities of what comes out at the end of the day. If they lose the position in the appeal court, obviously they have a final arbiter, which is the Supreme Court. Now, these are some of the issues that I believe actually run it borders on the election that should be taken care of in time. Tribunal is currently in sitting, and we're hoping that they can meet up with their deadline to ensure that all the cases bordering around the integrity and the finality of the elections can be delivered. It is important because if anyone is actually, in truth, in the long run, running on a false win, they should be dealt with immediately and let justice be dispensed so that democracy and those who have voted will have some faith in our judicial and democracy that it works. At the end of the day, you don't want a country where stolen mandates and stolen elections become the order of the day.
All right, thank you. Well spoken.
Okay, still on election matters, although this seems to be taking a rather interesting turn. Governor Ibikunle Amosun has been reported to have surrendered 1,000 AK-47 rifles, 4 million bullets acquired before the 2019 elections. This report is from the Premium Times, and it's rather exhausting, in its read. A few hours to the end of his tenure as Ogun State governor, Ibikunle Amosun contacted the State's Commissioner of Police, Bashir Makama, confessing, according to the Premium Times, that he had thousands of arms and millions of ammunition in store at a secret armory in Government House, and that he had decided to hand them over to the police. I guess this is a story for Justin.
So let's enumerate the items that he surrendered. At least, meaning that the count is not exact, at least 4 million rounds of ammunition.
Sounds like a lot.
1,000 units. Okay, let me back up. 4 million rounds of ammunition. Let me put that against the backdrop of the population of the state, right? So the state has about 3.2 million people.
My goodness.
There are more ammunition than people.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. 1,000 units of AK-47 assault rifles. 1,000 units of bulletproof vests, and 1 armored personnel carrier. These items were warehoused in an armory in the Ogun State Government House. A few days to his handing over. So, again, more backdrop. You will recall that Mr. Amosun had sponsored. Mr. Amosun is of the APC, right? He's currently a senator in the 19th. At the state level, he had sponsored a candidate in a different party during the Guba elections, one Adekunle Akinlade of Allied People's Movement, who was then defeated at the polls by Dapo Abiodun of the APC. You will also remember there was some drama when the campaigns were going on and Mr. President had gone to Ogun State and he was booed, and the party bigwigs were also disgraced and all of that. So he's fallen out of favor with the party by virtue of what had happened then. And then this. I would say that Mr. Amosun's goose is cooked.
But this time around, he reported himself, handed over.
Doesn't change the
arms
fact
and
that a
ammunition
crime
himself.
has been committed. So let's talk about the Arms Control Act
and
in Nigeria,
Proliferation,
and Proliferation Act.
Mm.
So for you to import arms into Nigeria, you need what is called an end user license. The only office that can approve the end user license is the Office of the National Security Advisor. And you must get the end user license before the arms and ammunition are shipped into Nigeria. He didn't do that.
Assuming you're an arms dealer or just anybody?
Yes, assuming you're a licensed arms dealer. But even then, you could sponsor. Lagos State did it. Fasola, right, actually donated arms to the police back then. But what he did was get the end user license and have the arms delivered directly to the police.
Right.
Mr. Amosun didn't do that. He created an armory in the government house and stockpiled these weapons.
For what reason?
If you ask me, who I go ask. He says, however, well, he didn't say anything because he refused to respond to questions sent to him by Premium Times before publishing this article. But they did reach out to the Nigerian Customs and the Office of the NSE, who have both respectively denied issuing an end user license or processing those items through the ports.
But it's interesting because Governor Amosun did say something when he was handing over the weapons. He said he had procured the ammunition to check widespread insecurity in his state, and that he decided to keep them in the government house armory to ensure they were not allocated indiscriminately by security agencies.
So who provides oversight functions over arms?
So there's another funny angle to this. The police commissioner in the state, Mr. Bashir Makama, was the one he called who received these items from him. Now, the gentleman has also been questioned as to, did you ask for the source of the weapon before you received it? Police force headquarters has denied knowledge of this seizure or this handover. Apparently, he didn't report to force headquarters. So when this report was going to be published, he started making frantic efforts to do that. But this is a couple of months after the elections.
It's already too late.
Exactly. So it begins to raise questions again as to what exactly happened. How could a governor just call you and say, come and collect what is basically ammunition for a small army?
What would you say as possible consequences to this?
He needs to go to jail.
In an ideal case.
He needs to go to jail. Okay. Yeah, he needs to be stripped of the election he won sending him to the Senate, and he needs to go to jail.
All right, so moving on.
What the law requires.
Thank you very much, Justin. The next story is from the Punch newspaper, but very quickly, let's look at your messages. Chika Agina from Marina sends in this one. It says, so the same chief, Robert Clark, that was quick to condemn Justice Onogan for corrupt practices and enriching himself without following due process, is now defending Justice Ajumogobia that have been trying or has been tried and found wanting. The case is not closed yet, so there's no conviction at this point yet, so we'll follow the story very closely. Next message we have is from Emeka.
Okay, Emeka Atojo says, if I may ask, who is in charge of armed forces, the federal government or the state or Amosun? How did these arms get to the state, as we're not in a state policing environment? This is how arms get to thugs, through unscrupulous politicians. And St. Faja says, good morning, see what the governor has. I'm so sure those weapons will be used in a funny way. This is Nigeria.
And Francis from Surulere said, it is beyond insanity that Amosun would have so much ammunition stored at the government house. I do not understand why he would have so many weapons. This is barbaric and pure madness. I think Amosun should be prosecuted. And Patrick here sent in this one. It says, is INEC speaking in tongues? I thought it said that there was no server. Is there no server? Was there no server in the first place? Why did the tribunal refuse PDP access to it? Surprise, surprise. Well, they said there was no server. They still stand their ground, saying there was no server used.
Benga Komu says, we wonder why Amosun has not been taken in for questioning. How did he get the weapons into the country? We have always suspected that politicians are at the root of arms proliferation. Are we sure these arms have not been put to devious uses? Questions, so many.
All right, Devoe, let's look at this story together from the Punch newspaper. Some kidnapping cases are false, is what Osinbajo tells Nigerians in the U.S. The vice president spoke in a visit to the United Kingdom. He said, despite the travel advisory that was issued by United Kingdom about rising insecurity occasioned by kidnapping, banditry, militancy, terrorism, and other challenges, he spoke through his special advisor, media and publicity, Femi Additional, to the presidency when they said that the level of insecurity in the country is not as is reported. He said the vice president specifically described it as something that has been hyped up on social media. That's actually
yes. But actually, the vice president was speaking himself. He made some foreign trips recently of where he was in the UK and the US. That was in New York, and spoke to a gathering of Nigerians.
Yes.
Now, one of the key highlights was he said that the kidnappings in Nigeria were somehow exaggerated and not entirely new. With all due respect, Mr. Vice President, that is wash. Now, now this is going against, and let me repeat myself, you're saying that they're exaggerated and not entirely true, whereas the UK sent a travel advisory, which is the diplomatic form. It was actually a warning of their own citizens not to travel to almost 2/3 of Nigeria, okay, because of the state of insecurity occasioned by what we all know together: kidnapping, banditry, militancy, terrorism, and other challenges. Now, if this is the case on 2/3 of your country, there is a problem. Now, he also, when the special advisor did say that the level of insecurity had put the nation in dire times. And he went on to say that the social media, which is obviously how many of them receive their information, tended to be hysterical about practically everything. And that some of the general kidnappings that they see, by the time they do their verification, they realize that the dramatic ones were actually fueled by politics. Now, where lies the truth, amidst all this perception? These are your own citizens in the diaspora. Obviously, the UK and the US represent the largest countries that we travel to, and many have immigrated to. They're concerned. And I would rather say that, the state of Nigeria's narration in the international waters is in troubled waters. Obviously, if you're over there, basically what you receive all the time is one issue to the other on a daily basis.
Couldn't that be the reason why he decided to step in here to control the narrative?
Now that's where I'm going to. In controlling the narrative, which is the information management, it does little to resolve the problem. I think the import in terms of management should be less on information management and more on the practical, discrete steps taken currently within the country to address. That's the issue.
Yes, but he also mentioned that the discrete steps that you just he
broke down a few from Zamfara, how they shut down the mines.
Sorry, Devoe, just one second. We know that Inspector General of Police just a few weeks ago came out to release data to show their efforts across over 30 states in the country, and how it is that they've made arrests, kidnapping suspects that have been arrested, and those involved in banditry as well.
Yes, I want to term all those responses as yada yada. Wow. Recently, the Chief of Army Staff did say, yes, he put it on one aspect in terms of the level of allegiance to those in the front line. Obviously, we know there were more issues than that in terms of equipment, in terms of welfare, social, in terms of there's a plethora of issues affecting insecurity within the country. My point is, trying to manage the reality of the situation, which has gone bad, is not what we should be doing now.
I don't think we should be comparing managing reality to. I see your point clearly.
Yes,
but I don't think it's. It's right to compare managing reality to managing the narrative.
Yes, even in the narrative, remember, perception beats reality. That's the truth about life. Therefore, the government needs to, at this point in time, I don't think security has taken the front burner. At this point in time, maybe a state of emergency on security needs to be called, because we cannot continue living our lives with our eyes open 24 hours of the day simply because we're not sure that we'll be alive on the next.
Well, thank you. The army has those drones now, though.
Which drones? The ones.
Moving on. New
from
Telegraph has this story. JAMB nabs candidates for upgrading result scores to 290. So, a certain individual, his name is Ijeh. By this report, he says he's been arrested for allegedly upgrading his scores in the recent Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination from 153 to 290. When he was arrested, he couldn't currently speak good English, according to this report. It said even his SSE was found to be fraudulently acquired. But take us through the story, Justin.
I mean, first of all, this guy wins the award for the most stupid guy of the century.
Oh my gosh.
Why?
So he reads an ad on Facebook.
Yes. And what
that says, do you want to upgrade your 2019 JAMB results? Is your score too poor for admission into any of the universities? Then contact the numbers.
Come, we can
the
increase
following
it.
numbers. And he contacts the numbers, and they tell him, what did you score? And he's told them 130, thereabouts, 153. And they said, okay, we can raise it to 290. And he says, okay. And he pays some money. And then apparently they tell him to now write a letter to JAMB, telling JAMB that JAMB had made a mistake on his results. And the bozo, the clown, writes a letter to JAMB saying, hey guys, you gave me a result sheet saying 153, but my score is actually 290. Can you please correct?
In a country where you have accusations and counter accusations of forged certificates and results, would you blame citizens who live in a country where the education system is deplorable? I'm not making the case for him.
Has collapsed.
I'm going to throw you off a COVID.
No violence in the studio. Well, go on though.
So anyway, he writes this letter to JAMB, and the matter gets to the registrar's desk, and the registrar says, okay, invite him to come and take his new certificate.
With his evidence.
And
he showed up, and that's how he was arrested. I don't know. Young people out there, please study and write your exams, and you will pass.
In which
the
schools?
exams are not that tough. But this is another level of
Justin,
stupid.
wow.
No,
Justin. Please.
Now.
No, it is. Which is why they dropped the cutoff recently. You know the cutoff mark has been dropped.
I don't think it was
the fact that we're lowering the bar doesn't mean that the exams are difficult. We're just, let me not
Which states the real issue? They don't have schools. The school system has collapsed. So you're not getting properly educated individuals.
We have messages to go through.
Okay, so let's
you don't be writing letters to JAMB and co and telling them.
Let's take this message. Tayo from Yaba says, PYO, that's the vice president, is holding my hand. Even the former health minister's son was kidnapped. Government is all talk, no action. Ozzy?
Ozzy says, my VP, with all due respect, should stop telling stories. I, as a Benin woman, has to plan with private security to go home to Benin. I can't even go by road.
You're hearing that?
I go in undercover mode, and I'm nobody. I'm not a VP, or a VIP rather, but I have to be careful so I'm not kidnapped. So I have to be extra careful. We're living a lie. We think Nigeria is safe, and disappointed with the VP's comment. Let's move on very quickly to this next story from Thisday newspaper. End banditry in 2 weeks is the deadline that the Zamfara police commissioner has given to Miyetti Allah in a conversation that he had recently. And even the Christian Association of Nigeria waiting to give this deadline as well. Well, looking through the entire conversation and the spate of farmer header crisis that started, according to them, from the need to explore more grazing lands by the herders. What are your thoughts on this?
It's funny that the state police commissioner is essentially pleading with bandits to stop being bandits. I mean, the things we see on these streets, right? They are bandits. They've been killing people for years. You are now asking them, I give you 2 weeks. Can you please bring the wrath of the law? It's overdue.
Let's address it really as it is. So he's not addressing the bandits themselves. He's telling Miyetti Allah. I understand where the statement is going to, but he's hinting at the fact that he feels, amongst other people who believe that Miyetti Allah are well aware of the true identities of these bandits. So says them out, because we know you guys know these people yourselves. So that's essentially what he's asking.
Yes. Anyway,
before you condemn
so after his appeal to them to stop the banditry or face the wrath of the law, let me just read out for everybody's hearing what the Sarkin Fulani Zamfara, the leader of the Fulani in Zamfara, Alhaji Ahmed Motawale, said. And I quote, Fulani people are peace-loving people. The Sarkin Fulani said Fulani herdsmen were subjected to all forms of intimidations and harassment by farmers who have continued to encroach and cultivate grazing lands and cattle routes meant for cattlemen. According to him, the refusal of the farmers to vacate grazing lands was one of the factors that contributed to the current insecurity problem, stressing that this was the beginning of farmers' Fulani clash, which led to reprisal attacks and finally metamorphosed into armed banditry. So essentially, he's saying, if you guys don't stop farming on the grazing routes, banditry will not end.
Yes.
We await the wrath of the law.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
So that's Justin taming his exuberance this morning. Follow the conversation with him on Twitter at Justin Ijeh, where you tweet at Justin Ijeh, and also tweet at Devoe Okorie. Devoe, thank you very much for being part of the show. And let's continue this conversation with hashtag FreshlyPressed981. Coming up next, we have the Grapevine here on Smooth 98.1. Good morning.
I invest.